Hello there, I'm Simon Rafe, and welcome to Brown Bag Bible Study, the Bible study that you can do in your lunch break. Now, this is an introduction to Scripture, which will give you some information that you might not have known, and it'll encourage you to read the Bible. But most importantly, it's presented in little bite-sized pieces, perfect to fit in with our busy lifestyles. Every week, I'll be concentrating on a small part of Scripture, either one of the 73 books of the Bible or a group of related books, and I'll bring you some interesting facts and information to help you understand it better. I'll also be including links to further reading, books, videos, podcasts, and so forth that'll help you learn to love sacred Scripture even more. This week, we continue with the books of Chronicles. As I mentioned last time, Chronicles is a retelling of the history covered in the books of Samuel and Kings, written in the post-exilic period, probably around the 3rd century BC. They give great emphasis to the temple liturgy and depict the monarchical period in a very positive manner, much more so than the books of Samuel and Kings. This is very apparent in the second book of Chronicles, which begins with Solomon, son of David, and the building of the first temple. It covers roughly the same period of history as the books of Kings, although very little emphasis is given to Solomon's harem and his worship of foreign gods. As in the books of Kings, subsequent kings are assessed by their fidelity, but not to the Deuteronomic covenant, but rather to prayer and temple worship. This difference of emphasis towards temple liturgy and away from the infidelities of the king's reigns reveals the books of Chronicles to be very different from the books of Samuel and Kings, and you should really read them alongside each other. There are places where parallel structure and even the same phrases are used, making the differences all the more stark. Perhaps the most striking difference is the optimistic conclusion to the books of Chronicles. 2nd Chronicles ends with Cyrus the Great of Persia releasing the Jews and setting them free, sending them back to Jerusalem. This narrative is continued in the next book of the Christian scriptures, Ezra, and in fact becomes even more positive as Cyrus orders his people to give the Jews money and goods to help them. But the positive conclusion has particular implications for modern Jews. The Jewish scriptures are most often ordered in a form known as the Tanakh, which ends with a collection of books known as the Ketuvim, or the writings. Now, despite the fact the book of Chronicles, remember, the Jews count this as a single book, not two, despite the fact this book deals with events before other books in the Ketuvim, it is placed last in the canon. Thus, the very last words of the scriptures, as used by many modern Jews, are instructions to return to Jerusalem and build it up. The importance of the land for the Jewish people cannot be overestimated. It is one of the marks of the Jewish people, something they are promised personally by God, and which they fight terrible wars and suffer many hardships to gain. For nearly 19 centuries, the Jews did not have a homeland, and it can be difficult for non-Jews to grasp just what this meant to them. When we consider that the last words of the Jewish scriptures urge Jews to return to Jerusalem, an additional understanding of Jewish and Israeli nationalism is made plain. Now, geopolitics aside, the books of Chronicles are an interesting read, allowing us to compare and contrast their liturgical emphasis with the Deuteronomic history. Read the books and take a look at the additional reading. Next week, we will continue the tale of the Jewish people with their return from exile in the book of Ezra. Until then, I'm Simon Rafe, and God bless. To learn more about the place of Scripture in the lives of Catholic Christians, I urge you to read Pope Benedict's apostolic exhortation Verbum Domini. The Pope encourages all Catholics to read, learn, and love Scripture, and to understand its relation to the Church. A link to this exhortation is included in the reading materials for every episode of Brown Bag Bible Study. Just click the link over there.